Mom slammed the papers down hard. "You are not getting a cent since your father agreed before he died." The notary looked up and said, "There is actually one more page." My name is Danielle Carter, and I am 34 years old. I work as an art teacher at a public school. That job title was a constant disappointment to my family. They cared about money and status, while I cared about colors and expression. I was always the overlooked child in a house that felt more like a museum than a home. The smell of turpentine and old canvas was my comfort, while they preferred expensive perfume. My father was the only one who understood me. He bought me my first sketchbook and told me to never stop creating, even when my mother called it a waste of time. When he passed away, I felt like the only light in my life had gone out. I struggled to pay my rent and bought my clothes at thrift stores while my siblings drove luxury cars. I felt small whenever I walked into their large estate. They thought I was weak because I chose passion over profit. I wasn't rich or glamorous like them, but I had something they didn't expect. If you have ever felt invisible in your own home, then this story is for you. Please subscribe if people underestimate you because of your career or life choices. Have you ever felt overshadowed by your loud siblings? Make sure to click the hype button before we continue the story. We gathered in the living room for the reading of the will. The air smelled of stale coffee and expensive lilies. My mother sat at the head of the table with a cold look in her eyes. The notary sat opposite her with a stack of crisp documents. My mother cleared her throat and looked directly at me. "Danielle, you are being removed from the inheritance because you are irresponsible." I felt a knot form in my stomach. My brother laughed and shook his head. "You waste your life on finger painting while we actually work for the family business." My sister chimed in too. "It is only fair since you never contributed anything of value to this family." I looked at them in shock. Dad promised me things would be fair. He told me he wanted me to be safe. My mother scoffed and tapped the paper. "Well, he changed his mind right before the end. This is the finalized will, and everyone here agrees it is for the best." My aunts and uncles nodded their heads like bobbleheads. They did not want to upset my mother. I felt tears prick my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. The room felt incredibly small, and I felt like I was suffocating. My mother pushed the document toward the notary. "Sign off on this so we can move forward." The notary adjusted his glasses and flipped through the pages. He frowned and paused. His hesitation made the room go silent. The ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall seemed to grow louder with every second of silence. My hands were shaking in my lap. I clenched them together to stop the trembling. I looked at the painting above the fireplace that my father bought years ago. It gave me a small boost of strength. My mother tapped her foot impatiently. "What is the holdup?" The notary looked up with a confused expression. He separated two pages that were stuck together. "There's an attached amendment here that no one has reviewed yet." My mother froze. "That is impossible. I saw the final draft myself." The notary shook his head slowly. "This page is dated 2 days before he passed. It changes everything regarding Danielle." The silence in the room was heavy. My siblings stopped smirking. My mother went pale. I sat up straighter in my chair. I had no idea what that page said, but I knew my father had not forgotten me. The notary looked at me with a serious face. "We need to read this immediately." Before the notary could read the new page, my brother leaned forward. "It does not matter what it says because we are contesting it." He looked at my sister. "We can split Danielle's share 50-50. I want the beach house and you can have the stocks." My sister nodded eagerly. "That sounds perfect to me." I could not believe they were dividing my life up right in front of me like I wasn't even there. Then my mother spoke up again. She looked at the relatives and sighed dramatically. "You have to understand why we are doing this. Danielle called me last year begging for grocery money. She cannot handle finances." I felt my face burn with heat. That was a private moment I trusted her with when my car broke down. She was using my vulnerability as a weapon. Then my aunt chimed in from the corner. "Danielle, you should just be grateful your mother lets you stay in the guest house for a few weeks. Most parents would not be so generous." I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted iron. They wanted me to cry. They wanted me to beg them for crumbs. I took a deep breath and let the anger turn into something cold and solid inside my chest. I looked at the document on the table. Wait a second. I pointed to the signature on the main page. That date is from when Dad was in the hospital under heavy medication. My mother narrowed her eyes. So what? He was lucid enough to know you don't deserve a fortune. My brother laughed again. Give it up, Danielle. You are out of your league here. We have the best lawyers in the city, and you have a public school salary. Their arrogance was thick in the air. It smelled like cheap cologne covering up a rot. My sister smirked at me. Just sign a waiver and maybe Mom will give you a small allowance. I looked her in the eye. I am not signing anything until I hear what that amendment says. My mother slammed her hand on the table again. This is ridiculous. That amendment is probably a forgery or a mistake. I know what my husband wanted. He wanted to protect the family legacy from someone who would just squander it on art supplies. The relatives murmured in agreement. They were so sure of their victory, they thought I was just a scared little girl they could bully into submission. But they forgot that I spent the last few months of his life by his bedside. I remembered the way he squeezed my hand when I visited. I remembered him whispering that I needed to watch out for the sharks. He told me he hid things where only I would look. I realized then that he knew exactly what my mother was capable of. He knew she would try to cut me out the moment he was gone. The notary held up his hand to silence the room. Please, everyone needs to calm down. I must verify the seal on this amendment before I read it aloud. My mother crossed her arms. Take all the time you need because it will not change the outcome. My brother pulled out his phone and started looking up vacation spots. He was already spending the money he thought he stole from me. My sister whispered to my aunt about redecorating the main hall. They ignored me completely. I sat there in the silence and watched them. They looked like vultures circling a carcass. The notary took out a magnifying glass and inspected the paper closely. The sound of paper rustling was the only noise in the room. My heart was pounding against my ribs, but I kept my face blank. I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing my fear. I waited for the truth to come out. What they didn't know was my father and I had prepared for this exact moment. Weeks before he passed, we sat in his study late at night. The rain lashed against the window while he showed me everything. He knew my mother was pressuring him. She would corner him when he was weak and demand he change the will. He played along to keep the peace, but he was smarter than she realized. I had a flash drive in my purse right now that contained damning evidence. It held every email she sent him threatening to leave him if he did not cut me out. It held recorded conversations where she admitted she only wanted the money. I spent months quietly organizing these files. I remember sitting in my small apartment at 3 a.m., listening to the recordings. Hearing my mother's voice drip with greed made me sick to my stomach, but it also gave me a quiet determination. I was not just fighting for money, I was fighting for my father's dignity. He did not want his legacy stolen by people who never truly loved him. I kept this secret from everyone, including my siblings. If they knew what I had, they would have destroyed it. I learned to play the part of the clueless artist while I built my case. I watched them plot and scheme while I held the ultimate trump card. I looked at my mother across the table. She looked so confident and untouchable. She had no idea the ground was about to crumble beneath her feet. I had a strategy to reveal the truth without looking like the aggressor. I would let them dig their own graves with their words first. The evidence was my shield and my sword. I felt the weight of the flash drive in my pocket. It felt heavier than lead. I was ready to honor the promise I made to my father on his deathbed. He told me to be strong when the time came. I took a slow breath and prepared myself. The game was about to change, and they were not ready for the rules I was about to set. Just then, the door to the study opened, and another man walked in. It was Mr. Henderson. He was my father's old family lawyer who had retired years ago. He had always respected me and treated me with kindness. My mother looked annoyed. "What are you doing here, Henderson? You are not the executor anymore." Mr. Henderson smiled politely, but his eyes were sharp. "I am here as an advisor to the estate and a witness for Danielle." He walked over and stood behind my chair. He placed a hand on my shoulder and squeezed it gently. "Remember, truth matters more than appearances." His presence made the air in the room shift. He leaned over the table and looked at the documents my mother had presented. These papers seemed to lack the proper witness signatures for a modification of this magnitude. My mother waved her hand dismissively. That is just a clerical error. The intent is clear. Mr. Henderson raised an eyebrow. In law, details are everything, not just clerical errors. My brother rolled his eyes. This is boring. Can we just get to the part where we sign the checks? I am closing on a penthouse next week and I need the deposit. My sister giggled. I'm already looking at contractors to tear down Dad's old studio. It is such an eyesore, and we need a new pool house. Hearing them talk about destroying my father's sanctuary made my blood boil. They were so smug. They were discussing renovations and purchases as if the money was already in their bank accounts. Mr. Henderson looked at my mother. Are you sure you want to proceed with this version of the will, knowing the scrutiny it will face? My mother scoffed. I have nothing to hide. I am his wife, and I know what is best. Mr. Henderson looked at me and gave a subtle nod. It was our signal. We had a coordinated plan. He knew about the evidence I had, and he was helping me set the trap. The notary finally finished inspecting the amendment. He cleared his throat loudly. The sound echoed off the high ceilings. I have verified the seal and the signature. This document is authentic. My mother's smile faltered for a second, but she quickly recovered. Fine, read it. It probably just leaves her a few trinkets. The room grew deadly quiet. The only sound was the rustling of the paper as the notary lifted it up. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my posture perfect. I looked at my siblings who were still checking their phones. They had no idea their world was about to end. Mr. Henderson stood tall beside me, like a guard dog. My aunt leaned over to my mother. Do not worry, it is probably just a sentimental letter. They all chuckled. They were convinced I had already lost. They thought they were untouchable, kings and queens of this little kingdom. The notary adjusted his glasses and looked at the family. This is not a letter, it is a legal codicil. My brother laughed out loud. A codicil for what? Her paintbrushes? The disrespect was palpable. I took a sip of water to moisten my dry throat. The glass felt cool in my hand. I focused on the condensation dripping down the side. It was the only real thing in a room full of fake smiles. My mother tapped her long fingernails on the mahogany table. Click, click, click. It was the sound of a time bomb counting down. I looked at Mr. Henderson and he winked. It was time. The tension was so thick it felt like a physical weight pressing down on us. The notary began to read the first line. The notary's voice was steady. I hereby revoke all previous clauses regarding the exclusion of my daughter Danielle. She is to inherit 50% of the total estate and the family home. The room erupted. My mother stood up so fast her chair fell over. That is a lie. That is a fake. My brother dropped his phone. 50%? That's insane. The notary continued reading. Furthermore, if any family member attempts to contest this amendment, they will be automatically disinherited completely. My mother was screaming now. She looked like a wild animal. I forced him to write a different will. I know I did. She covered her mouth, realizing what she just said. The room went silent. I stood up slowly. I pulled the flash drive out of my pocket and placed it on the table. It made a small clicking sound that seemed to echo like a gunshot. I looked her in the eye. I know you forced him, Mom, and I have the proof right here. Mr. Henderson stepped forward. This drive contains audio recordings of you threatening your husband. It also has emails where you laid out your plan to defraud Danielle. If you try to fight this, not only will you lose everything, but you will also face criminal charges for coercion and fraud. My sister looked at my mother with horror. Mom, is this true? Did you really threaten Dad? My mother stammered. I did it for us. I did it to keep the money in the family. I looked at them coldly. I am the family too, but you treated me like a stranger. My brother slumped in his chair. The color drained from his face. His penthouse dreams were evaporating. My aunt and uncle, who had been nodding along earlier, suddenly looked at their shoes. They wanted no part of this disaster. My mother looked around the room for support, but found none. Her confidence collapsed like a house of cards. She sank back into her chair, defeated. Mr. Henderson continued, the amendment is binding. Danielle is now the majority shareholder of the estate. You can accept this, or we can go to court where these recordings will be played for the public. The choice is yours. My mother looked at the flash drive with fear. She knew her reputation would be destroyed. She whispered, we accept it. The silence that filled the room was heavy and suffocating. It was the sound of total defeat. The attempt to erase me had backfired in the worst possible way. They wanted to leave me with nothing, but instead they handed me the keys to the kingdom. I looked at the painting of my father again. I could almost hear him laughing. He had protected me even from the grave. The notary closed the folder. Then it is settled. The meeting is adjourned. I picked up the flash drive. I did not need to say anything else. My actions had spoken louder than their insults. I walked past my siblings who could not even look me in the eye. They were small and pathetic in the face of the truth. I felt a cold sense of justice wash over me. The air in the room felt cleaner now. The rot had been exposed. I paused at the door and looked back. My mother was staring at the table, her hands trembling. She looked old and frail, stripped of her power. I almost felt sorry for her, but then I remembered the years of neglect. I remembered the way she made me feel worthless. That pity evaporated instantly. I turned the handle and walked out of the study. The sound of the door latching shut behind me was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of a chapter closing forever. In the days that followed, I accepted my inheritance with a calm mind. I did not go on a spending spree or brag to my friends. I simply secured my future. I decided to keep the family house, but I set firm boundaries. My mother and siblings had to move out within the month. It was harsh, but it was necessary for my peace. They tried to apologize, of course. My brother sent me texts saying he was just stressed. My sister brought me flowers and tried to talk about old times. I politely declined their attempts. I chose distance over drama. I realized that healing doesn't mean reconciling with people who hurt you. It means protecting yourself from them. I turned my father's old studio into a community art space for kids who felt overlooked like I did. Every time I walked into that room, I felt his presence. He had faith in me when no one else did. He saw my strength even when I felt weak. I learned that I am not defined by my family's opinion of me. I am defined by my own actions and my own integrity. I walked through the garden one last time before the renovation started. The sun was setting and casting long shadows on the grass. I felt a deep sense of gratitude. I had survived the storm and come out stronger on the other side. I knew my worth now, and I would never let anyone try to rewrite my story again. I was the author of my own life, and the ending was going to be beautiful. The wind rustled through the trees, sounding like a whisper of approval. I smiled, finally free. If you've ever dealt with family betrayal or legal battles over inheritance, I want to hear from you. Please share your story in the comments so we can support each other. No one should be pushed aside by their own blood. Subscribe to this channel to connect with others who understand this struggle. Remember to stand up for your rights. Click hype to help this story reach others who need it. If this story resonated with you emotionally, please hit the like button. It really helps us grow. Don't forget to click hype to help spread this message to more people. Your voice matters in this community, and I love reading your thoughts. Drop a comment below if you've ever felt like the underdog. I read every single one. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.